think. So good afternoon. I think there is a sense in which it doesn't matter what I say now, because you're all just going to have that mental picture of Keith in his Speedo. This is going to wash over you. It certainly is with me. So thank you for that, Jonathan. This, I think, is the last speech before we kind of get to eat. So I had planned a few toasts along the way, so you might want to charge your glasses so that we build up a bit of appetite. This is a slightly unusual role for a brother-in-law to play. And most of you will know that we lost Stan, Joe's dad, during the course of this year. And what's always been clear between us is it's not a kind of substitute for that role. Doesn't need to be. And the reason for that is because I, as I'm sure you all are really proud to see Joe here today, but Stan would have looked prouder. And I, as I'm sure you all are, I'm kind of really pleased to be here to celebrate with Keith and Joe today. But Stan's here too, depending on your beliefs in spirit or in our memories. And I, as I'm sure you all will be complaining about the bar prices later on, but Stan Wainhouse would have been well ahead. I should also reference Jean, who at the moment is in a ward at the North Manchester General Hospital, probably describing this whole ceremony to some poor unfortunate people. Those of you who know Jean will know that that process is taking longer than this entire ceremony. So I think for all of those reasons, a toast to all the kind of departed and absent parents is important. Absolutely. So given it's not that role, I think the role that's required here is a sort of best man for the bride with a speech to match. But you might disagree, which is why I've gone to the trouble of preparing two speeches. And I'm going to briefly describe them to you and then let you vote which one you're going to get. In the more mature speech, which is proper grown-up emotional territory, I talk about how beautiful and assured Joe looks today and how comfortable and happy Keith and her look together. I talk about how much we love Joe and how, having known Keith over the last 7 years, we love him too. And then quickly, because Keith is as demonstrative as any good County Durham boy, I make clear that that's love in a kind of great to walk up hills with. And not in any kind of come here and give us a hug, good guy, your family now sort of thing, which I know he wouldn't like. I welcome Keith and all his family into what is now our extended family. It's just, from a personal point of view, really nice to kind of welcome some really nice new people into the mix, because it's often quite quiet and uneventful. and then I wish them all, on behalf of us all, a fulfilling and happy and blissful marriage. And in that speech, if I give it, I invite you all to toast Joe and Keith. Now, raising a toast is a complicated business, so I think we should have a practice. Joe and Keith. And if you want that speech, when I put it to the vote, I'd like you all to say, ah. So quick practice. Ah. Excellent. Now, the alternative speech includes the dynamite I have picked up in 28 years of knowing Joe Wainwright. Unlike Jonathan, I did give her ample opportunities to vet this speech, and she's turned them all down. Despite that appalling judgment, she's somehow held down a successful career as a police officer. And if I give that speech, I intend to draw out all of those stories and then help Keith come to the conclusions that he should do about the woman that he's just married. And if you want that speech, when I call it to the vote, I want you to say, she never. Quick practice.
She never.
After 3. 1, 2, 3. Make your practice.
She never.
Yeah, one of them's completely empty, ladies and gentlemen. So, best men's speeches, I find, are usually complete lies from start to end. Because at 20-something, the groom really hasn't done that much of any interest, so people just make it up. I don't need to do that, and I think it would be disrespectful to you and Joe to do that, and I don't need to, given the material I've got to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call on the person in the room here today, best placed to confirm that the story I'm going to tell is completely and totally accurate, to say that it's accurate. So you need to keep me honest here. Story number 1 for Keith's benefit. Jo will make out that she's nervous and anxious, always has a little packet of extra strong mints as her emotional crutch. And despite that, you'd be surprised to find she also has a Chief Constable Bravery Award. for, in a high-rise block, stepping aside her colleagues, with her baton and, by all accounts, repeatedly hitting the knife-wielding miscreant to the floor so he could be arrested. Can I call upon the representatives of the Greater Manchester Police here today, Rebecca, Angie, Dan, to confirm is that A, an episode of the Sweeney they wouldn't be allowed to make anymore, or B, an actual Joe Wainhouse fact? It's an actual Joe Wainhouse fact. Yeah. Absolutely. So the conclusion for Keith is that she's much, much braver than she makes out. Story number 2 for Keith. If you believe Jo, she spent all her formal years in education on top of a bus stop quite close to the Eldon Road. Angie Bunner was on top of that bus stop with her. My wife was teaching them Latin verbs on top of that. If I'm honest, ladies and gentlemen, some of these family stories do merge after a bit. But it's surprising, therefore, that later in life, Jo managed to get a Cert Ed, having worked as a mature student. And I'm going to call on Joe Wainhouse to confirm whether that is exactly the sort of thing the teacher who found you on top of the bus stop would rightly say you'd never achieve, or an actual Joe Wainhouse fact.
An actual Joe Wainhouse fact?
So, conclusion for Keith, much, much sharper than she makes out. Joe will also predict great doom about to befall us at any moment. Every plane is about to crash. This morning, the florist was definitely not turning up. And it's a ridiculous and exaggerated view of the kind of the things that actually happen to people, the risks that come up. In all the time that I've known Jo, the only risk to actually materialise had been contracted a very rare form of skin cancer, spent 2 weeks in an isolation bubble on an infectious diseases ward with a medically unprecedented case of cold sores, been bitten by a snake off the coast of Africa without access to anti-venom treatment, bitten by a kitten in Thailand, a country with a particularly high incidence of rabies. You're getting the idea, the list is too long. Yeah. Keith Wells, as a statement of fact and without any blame, the most serious of these did happen on your watch. So can you confirm whether these are either a Daily Mail article blaming doctors for not spotting all of the above, or an actual Joe Wainhouse fact? Now, the conclusion is quite interesting here, because you might conclude that meant that Keith had married the unluckiest woman in the world, and that would be bad news. I'm going to suggest that's not the way to look at it. With Jo at your side, as a potent magnet for risks, you are now pretty much invincible. and so if you keep Jo close, but just not too close, you can visit the most dangerous corners of the world, safe in the knowledge that you at least will be fine. I hear the Tuareg blues clubs in downtown Mogadishu are quite something. So the conclusion is, keep her close but not too close. And the last story relates to a family holiday that we had, where actually Jo and Jodie came along in Italy. We went to a tiny little local classy restaurant. They'd have described it as quiet and suitably reverential. I describe it as a bit up itself and unnervingly quiet. And the evening was going really well until my son Tom, at a certain stage in the evening, created what can only be described as one of history's top 10 farts. Now, society will tell you that you should chastise your children at moments like this. I have to say, every ounce of my being wanted to high-five him and encourage a lap of honour. Is that impressive? And we did that British thing of just pretending that absolutely nothing had happened. Jo, worried about the impact on all the other diners and feeling an empathy for how that would ruin their evening, turned around and managed to summon up how to say "excuse me" in 3 different European languages. And to this day, 36 well-heeled diners think Jo Wainhouse did one of history's top 10 crimes. And it is typical of Jo to be so warm-hearted that she'd feel the need to apologise for something that my son should have put his hand up to. So, Keith, Today you're marrying somebody who is...
He's just married, isn't he?
Sorry?
He's married.
You have already married somebody.
Let's tense up, put a few tense.
Who is smarter, braver and warmer than she'll ever tell you. And you get invincibility thrown in for free. You're lucky to have her. Oops.
Glass control.
Absolutely. Lucky to have her, and actually she's lucky to have you too. I think a last toast is in order, ladies and gentlemen. To Joe and Keith, a wonderful marriage and many happy nights in downtown Mogadishu. Thank you.